A common historical fact is the profound impact of the placebo effect, even before it was formally understood or named. Patients often reported significant improvement after receiving inert treatments, simply because they believed they were receiving powerful medicine. Think of the elaborate rituals surrounding some cures, the chanting, the specific times of administration, the grand pronouncements of the healer. All these elements contributed to a heightened expectation of healing. You might be given a small, beautifully crafted vial of holy water or a blessed charm, and the sheer weight of its perceived sanctity would convince your mind that it held curative powers. It's like being told a plain glass of water is a magical elixir. If you truly believe it, your body might just respond as if it were, "Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time. Not to a grand ballroom or a bustling marketplace, but into the dimly lit, often grimy and painfully uncertain world of 18th century medicine." Imagine, if you will, the flickering candlelight casting long, dancing shadows across a fevered brow, the air thick with the scent of unwashed linens and perhaps a faint, cloying sweetness of something vaguely medicinal or perhaps something far less savory. You're there, feeling the chill seep into your bones, the dull ache that never quite goes away, or the sudden, terrifying onset of a cough that rattles your very core. This isn't a romanticized past. This is a past where a simple cut could mean a lingering death, where a common cold could escalate into a fatal pneumonia, and where the most advanced medical knowledge often amounted to little more than educated guesswork, superstition, and a whole lot of hope. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't have made it to adulthood. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The power of suggestion was immense in an era where scientific understanding of the body was so limited. If a respected figure, whether a local wise woman or a traveling doctor, confidently declared that a particular remedy would work, people were far more inclined to believe them. This wasn't just about gullibility, it was about the desperate human need for authority and certainty in the face of overwhelming uncertainty. You, feeling vulnerable and lost, would cling to any voice that spoke with conviction, offering a path out of your suffering. The louder and more confident the pronouncements, the more likely you were to suspend your disbelief. You find yourself navigating the narrow, cobbled streets of an 18th century city, perhaps London or Paris, or a smaller, equally disease-ridden town. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, refuse, and the ever-present stench of human and animal waste. Life expectancy is a grim lottery, and every cough, every ache, every unexplained rash sends a shiver of dread down your spine. There is no internet to consult, no emergency room to rush to, no trusted family doctor with years of specialized training. Your options are few, and your desperation is profound. For a unique and lesser-known detail, consider the practice of touching for the king's evil scrofula. For centuries, it was believed that the monarch of England and France possessed a divine power to cure scrofula, a form of tuberculosis affecting the lymph nodes. Simply by touching the afflicted person, thousands would flock to royal ceremonies, enduring long journeys and arduous waits, just for a brief touch from the king or queen. While the disease itself was often self-limiting and could go into remission naturally, the sheer spectacle, the deeply ingrained belief in divine right, and the collective hope of the multitude undoubtedly created a powerful placebo effect. You might be one of those hopeful souls, standing in line for hours, feeling the weight of the crowd's anticipation, and when the monarch's hand briefly brushes your skin, a profound sense of peace, and perhaps even a temporary alleviation of symptoms, washes over you. It's less about biology and more about belief in the divine, a truly royal placebo. Imagine the constant gnawing fear of illness. You watch as neighbors, friends, and family members succumb to ailments that today are easily treatable or even eradicated. Smallpox, tuberculosis, dysentery, typhus. These aren't abstract concepts. They are ever-present threats, lurking in the shadows, ready to snatch away a loved one, or worse, you. The concept of germ theory is centuries away, and the understanding of sanitation is rudimentary at best. Now, you live in a world where disease is often attributed to miasmas, bad air, or imbalances in the body's humors, or even divine displeasure. The lack of scientific understanding isn't just an academic void. It's a terrifying, tangible absence that dictates the very rhythm of your life. Every day is a gamble against unseen enemies, and the stakes are impossibly high. The academic debate still explores the extent to which 18th century practitioners, particularly the more ethical ones, consciously utilized the placebo effect. Did they understand that a patient's belief could influence their recovery? And did they deliberately employ theatricality or reassuring language to enhance this effect? Or was it simply an accidental byproduct of their attempts to instill confidence? You, the patient, might not care about the academic nuances. You just know that sometimes, after taking a seemingly useless remedy, you felt a little bit better, and that was enough. The doctors of the era, those who claim formal training, are often little better than the quacks they disdain. Their tools are crude lancets for bleeding, saws for amputation, and a pharmacopoeia filled with substances that range from inert to actively harmful. You might visit a physician who, after a brief examination of your tongue and a sniff of your urine, prescribes a vigorous bleeding to rebalance your humors, or perhaps a powerful purge, designed to expel the offending bad humors from your system, leaving you weak and dehydrated, but theoretically cured. The logic, to them, is impeccable, rooted in ancient Greek theories that have dominated medical thought for over a millennium. To you, lying there, feeling the life drain from your veins, it feels less like healing and more like a slow, deliberate weakening. You might even find yourself wondering if the cure is worse than the disease, a thought that would be considered sacrilege by the learned men in their powdered wigs. Hope itself was a potent medicine. In a world where death was a constant companion and effective treatments were rare, the very act of seeking a cure, of believing in the possibility of recovery, could be incredibly therapeutic. This psychological uplift could boost the immune system, reduce stress, and improve overall well-being, even if the physical remedy was inert. You might feel a surge of optimism after buying a miracle cure, and that renewed spirit could genuinely help your body fight the illness. It's the human spirit's refusal to give up, even when all odds are stacked against it. Consider the common historical fact that bloodletting was a cornerstone of 18th century medical practice. It wasn't just a fringe treatment. It was widely accepted and performed for almost every conceivable ailment, from fevers to inflammation, from apoplexy to hysteria. The belief was that by removing excess blood, you could restore balance to the body's four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If you had a fever, it was because you had too much blood, and so out it came. If you were feeling lethargic, perhaps a bit of bloodletting would invigorate you. The sheer volume of blood removed from patients, often repeatedly, is staggering to modern sensibilities. You might be bled until you fainted, a sign, they believed, that the procedure was working. The irony, of course, is that this often weakened already sick patients, making them more susceptible to infection and less able to fight off their original illness. It's like trying to put out a fire by throwing gasoline on it. But with a straight face and a very serious demeanor, the social and communal aspects of healing also played a significant role in enhancing the placebo effect. When a community collectively believed in a particular remedy or a specific healer, that shared belief created a powerful reinforcing loop. Stories of miraculous recoveries would spread, further bolstering faith and encouraging others to try the same treatment. You might hear your neighbors enthusiastically recounting how a certain tonic cured their cousin's rheumatism, and that collective testimony would make you more inclined to believe it could cure yours too. It was a powerful form of social contagion, but for Hope, the desperation isn't just about physical suffering, it's also about a profound psychological burden. Imagine the constant anxiety, the feeling of helplessness. When a child falls ill, there are no pediatricians, no antibiotics, no advanced diagnostics. You watch, you pray, and you hope, often in vain. The grief is constant, a shadow that follows you through life. This emotional toll fuels an insatiable hunger for anything that promises relief, anything that offers a glimmer of hope in a world shrouded in medical ignorance. This is where the miracle cures find their fertile ground, blossoming in the despair of the populace. They don't just offer physical healing, they offer psychological solace, a sense of control in an uncontrollable world. Consider the role of faith healers and religious rituals. Beyond the secular charlatans, many people sought solace and healing through religious figures or ceremonies. Prayers, blessings, pilgrimages, and the veneration of relics were common practices. While these offered no direct medical intervention, the profound spiritual comfort and the strong belief in divine intervention could trigger powerful psychological responses, leading to perceived improvements in health. You might embark on a long, arduous pilgrimage to a holy site, and the sheer effort, devotion, and collective spiritual energy would leave you feeling renewed, perhaps even healed, by the time you returned home. It's the ultimate mind-body connection, where the mind is connecting to something far greater than itself. Now, for a unique and lesser-known detail, did you know that some 18th century doctors would prescribe powder of sympathy? This wasn't a powder to be ingested by the patient. Oh no. This magical powder, often made from vitriol sulfuric acid and other dubious ingredients, was applied to the weapon that caused the wound, or to a cloth soaked in the patient's blood. The theory was that by treating the instrument of injury, the wound itself would heal through some mystical sympathetic connection. You can almost picture the scene: a man with a festering wound, while the doctor meticulously sprinkles powder on the rusty knife that caused it, muttering incantations. It's a testament to the sheer imaginative leaps people were willing to make in the absence of actual understanding. It's less medicine and more performance art, with your life as the unwitting prop. And you, poor soul, would likely be paying handsomely for this theatrical display of utter nonsense. The very act of being cared for, of having someone acknowledge your suffering and offer a solution, no matter how ineffective, could be immensely comforting. In a time when medical attention was often harsh and impersonal, a kind word, a reassuring touch, or the simple act of listening to your complaints could provide a sense of validation and hope. You might find more comfort in the compassionate demeanor of a quack, however misguided, than in the cold, detached professionalism of a formally trained physician. Sometimes the cure was simply the feeling of being seen. This era is also characterized by a profound lack of regulation. Anyone, it seems, can set themselves up as a healer, a physician, or a purveyor of elixirs. There are no medical boards, no licensing requirements, no rigorous scientific standards to uphold. The marketplace of health is a wild west, teeming with opportunists and genuine believers in their own strange concoctions. You see advertisements plastered on walls, hawkers shouting their wares in town squares, and pamphlets distributed promising cures for everything from toothaches to consumption. The sheer volume of these claims, often contradictory and always extravagant, speaks to the desperate need they were trying to fill. It's a free-for-all, and you, the ailing public, are the unwitting guinea pigs. The human body's natural ability to heal itself was often mistakenly attributed to these miracle cures. Many illnesses are self-limiting, meaning they resolve on their own with time, rest, and the body's own immune system. When a patient took a remedy and then recovered from a self-limiting illness, the cure was given credit, even if it had no actual effect. You might take a spoonful of a strange elixir for a common cold, and when the cold eventually passes, you'd swear by the elixir, not realizing your body did all the work. It's like thanking the rain for making your car clean when you just drove through a car wash. The academic debate still rages among historians regarding the true extent of public trust in these miracle cures versus established medical practitioners. Were people genuinely convinced by the charlatans, or did they simply turn to them out of sheer desperation when conventional medicine failed, or was too expensive, or simply unavailable? It's a complex question, because while many undoubtedly fell prey to outright fraud, others might have experienced a placebo effect. Or perhaps the cure was simply inert and the body healed itself, leading to a mistaken attribution of success. You, living through it, might not care about the academic nuances. You just want relief, and you'll try anything that promises it. The psychological relief from chronic pain or anxiety could also be misinterpreted as a physical cure. When your mind is at ease, your perception of pain can decrease, and your overall sense of well-being can improve. Many of the 18th century ailments, such as melancholy or hysteria, had significant psychological components. Remedies that offered psychological comfort, even if inert, could therefore appear to be effective. You might feel less anxious after taking a calming cordial, and that reduction in anxiety could alleviate physical symptoms like headaches or stomach upset, making you believe the cordial was a true physical cure. The social fabric of the 18th century also played a significant role in this medical landscape. Communities were often isolated, and news traveled slowly. Word of mouth, rather than scientific journals, was the primary means of disseminating information about remedies. If a neighbor swore by a particular tonic that cured their cousin's gout, you might be inclined to try it, regardless of its actual efficacy. This created a powerful network of anecdotal evidence, reinforcing beliefs in treatments that had no basis in reality. You might hear whispers of a traveling doctor who cured a man of the falling sickness with a secret blend of herbs. And that rumor, amplified by hope and desperation, would spread like wildfire. The lack of critical thinking, as we understand it today, combined with the profound impact of suffering, created a perfect storm for the proliferation of these so-called miracle cures. The power of narrative and storytelling also played a crucial role. Charlatans and even some legitimate practitioners understood that a compelling story about a cure could be as effective as the cure itself. They would weave tales of discovery, of ancient wisdom, or of divine intervention, captivating their audience and enhancing the perceived potency of their remedies. You, listening to a dramatic tale of a cure, would find your imagination engaged, your hopes soaring, and your belief system primed for healing. It's like listening to a captivating story that makes you forget your troubles. But in this case, you're hoping it also cures your gout. Think about the sheer physical discomfort of daily life. Even without a specific illness, you're likely living with chronic pain from hard labor, poor diet, and rudimentary hygiene. Your teeth are probably rotting, your joints ache, and your skin is susceptible to all manner of rashes and infections. These constant low-level miseries wear you down, making you even more vulnerable to the promise of instant relief. A toothache, for instance, could be excruciating, leading you to seek out a tooth drawer who might pull the offending molar with a pair of rusty pliers, or offer a pain-killing elixir that contains opium or mercury. The desire for immediate cessation of suffering often overshadowed any long-term health considerations. You'd probably be willing to try anything, even if it smelled like rotten eggs and tasted like metal, if it meant a moment's peace from the agony. The fleeting nature of this comfort, however, was often the cruelest part. While the placebo effect could offer temporary relief, it rarely provided a lasting cure for serious, organic diseases. When the initial psychological boost wore off, or when the underlying illness progressed, the patient would often find themselves back in the throes of suffering, perhaps even more disillusioned than before. You might feel better for a few days, only to have the symptoms return with a vengeance, leaving you to wonder if you had somehow done something wrong, or if the miracle had simply run its course. The lack of effective pain relief is another critical factor. Opium, in various forms, was available, but its use was often unregulated and poorly understood, leading to addiction. Beyond that, there was little to truly alleviate suffering. Imagine enduring surgery without anesthesia, or a broken bone without proper setting and pain management. The sheer agony of illness and injury would drive anyone to seek out any potential remedy, no matter how outlandish. This pain, both acute and chronic, was a constant companion, a stark reminder of your vulnerability in a world that offered little comfort or cure. It's enough to make you pray to any deity, or believe any charlatan, who offers even the faintest whisper of relief. The academic debate also considers the ethical implications of knowingly administering placebos. While modern medicine sometimes uses placebos in clinical trials, the widespread, often deceptive, use of inert or harmful substances in the 18th century raises serious questions about patient autonomy and informed consent. Did practitioners have a moral obligation to disclose the true nature of their remedies, even if doing so might diminish the placebo effect? You, the patient, were often kept in the dark, your belief system being manipulated for your perceived benefit or for the practitioner's profit. This era, then, is a crucible of human suffering and boundless hope. The miracle cures aren't just a historical curiosity. They are a direct reflection of a society grappling with profound medical ignorance and an overwhelming desire for relief. You, the ordinary person in the 18th century, are not just a passive observer. You are an active participant in this desperate quest, a seeker of solace in a world where true medical understanding is still a distant dream. The stage is set for the charlatans, the alchemists, and the well-meaning but misguided practitioners to step into the spotlight, each promising to banish the shadows of disease with their own unique brand of magic. And you, with your aching bones and fevered brow, are ready to believe almost anything. Ultimately, the mind's potent medicine in the 18th century was a double-edged sword. It offered a powerful, often genuine, sense of comfort and temporary relief in a world devoid of true medical understanding. It was a testament to the incredible resilience of the human spirit and the profound connection between mind and body. Yet, it also allowed for the perpetuation of dangerous practices and the exploitation of the vulnerable, as the illusion of healing often masks the absence of actual cure. As you drift deeper into the quiet of the night, consider the enduring power of belief and how, even today, our minds can shape our reality, for better or for worse. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest healing begins not in a bottle, but within yourself. As you stand amidst the clamor of the 18th century street, a new figure emerges from the crowd. Not a learned physician in a sober black coat, but a flamboyant showman, a master of spectacle. This is the charlatan, the quack, and they are about to take center stage in your desperate search for a cure. They don't arrive quietly. They arrive with a flourish, often in a brightly painted carriage, accompanied by musicians, acrobats, or even a dwarf or two, all designed to draw a crowd. The air, already thick with the smells of the city, now carries the added aroma of cheap perfume, sweat, and perhaps the faint, metallic tang of whatever concoction they're about to peddle. You find yourself drawn in along with everyone else by the sheer audacity of their presentation. You've explored the subtle power of the mind in 18th century healing, a force that offered fleeting comfort amidst widespread suffering. Now, as the gentle hum of psychological influence fades, prepare yourself for a stark, chilling reality, the brutal world of 18th century surgical interventions. The air around you no longer carries the scent of strange tonics or the whisper of hope. Instead, you might imagine the metallic tang of blood, the faint cloying smell of sweat and fear, and the sharp, unyielding glint of steel. You are about to witness the cutting edge of medicine, where the blade was often the first and last resort, and survival was a testament to sheer resilience, not surgical precision. Imagine the scene: a makeshift stage erected in the town square, draped with colorful banners proclaiming impossible feats of healing. A booming voice cuts through the general hubbub, promising remedies that will banish all your woes, from the nagging toothache to the dreaded consumption. This isn't a quiet consultation in a dusty office. This is a performance, a theatrical event designed to dazzle, to entertain, and, most importantly, to convince you that salvation is at hand. For a small fee, of course. The charlatan, often dressed in outlandish attire, perhaps a velvet coat, a feathered hat, and rings on every finger, commands attention. Their eyes sparkle with a mixture of practiced charm and genuine self-belief, or at least a very convincing imitation of it. They are not just selling medicine, they are selling hope, wrapped in a package of sensationalism. Imagine yourself in a dimly lit room, perhaps a makeshift operating theater in a hospital, or even a private home. The surgeon, often a barber surgeon with little formal training beyond apprenticeships, stands over a patient, their face grim, their hands ready. There is no anesthesia as you know it, no sweet-inducing gas, no numbing injection. At best, the patient might have been given a strong dose of laudanum or a stiff drink of brandy, enough to dull the edges of their terror, but certainly not to erase the agony. You hear the sharp intake of breath, the muffled cries, and the sickening sounds of flesh being cut, bones being sawed. This isn't a sterile, controlled environment. It's a desperate, bloody spectacle, performed with chilling speed, for speed was the surgeon's only real kindness. A common historical fact about these charlatans is their reliance on elaborate public demonstrations. They wouldn't just talk about their cures, they would show them. You might witness a staged cure where a seemingly crippled man suddenly walks, or a blind person claims to see. Of course, these were often elaborate hoaxes with Confederates planted in the audience. But to the desperate and uncritical eye, they were nothing short of miraculous. The charlatan might dramatically pull a worm from a patient's tooth, or produce a stone from their bladder. All sleight of hand designed to impress and deceive. You, standing there, might feel a flicker of skepticism, but the sheer force of their personality and the collective excitement of the crowd can be incredibly persuasive. It's like watching a magic show, except the rabbit they pull out of the hat is your health, and the trick is on you. A common historical fact is the sheer speed with which 18th century surgeons operated. With no anesthesia, minimizing the patient's agony was paramount. A skilled surgeon could amputate a limb in a matter of minutes, sometimes even less. This wasn't about finesse, it was about brute force and practiced efficiency. Imagine the surgeon, their hands flying, instruments clattering, the clock ticking, as they raced against the patient's pain and the grim reaper. You might watch, horrified, as a leg is severed in what feels like mere seconds, a testament to the surgeon's dexterity, but also to the unspeakable suffering of the patient. It's like watching a butcher work, but the meat is a living, screaming human being. The rhetoric they employ is a masterclass in persuasion. They speak in grand, sweeping terms, promising universal remedies that cure all known diseases. Their elixirs are universal panaceas, grand restoratives, or life-giving balms. They often claim to have discovered their secrets in exotic lands, from ancient texts, or through divine inspiration. Behold, they might cry, holding aloft a bottle filled with murky liquid. This very potion, distilled from the tears of a unicorn and the wisdom of the ancient Egyptians, shall banish the very essence of your suffering. You might roll your eyes, but then you remember that persistent cough, that aching joint, and a tiny part of you wonders, what if that tiny what if is all they need? What? The instruments themselves were terrifyingly basic saws, knives, forceps, and various probes, often unsterilized, carrying the unseen threat of infection. The concept of germ theory was still far in the future, so surgeons often operated in their street clothes, with dirty hands, and used instruments that had merely been wiped clean. If that, the operating table might be a simple wooden board, and the light, a few flickering candles, or a single window. You would see the surgeon's assistants, often strong men, holding the patient down, their faces etched with grim determination. The air would be heavy with the unspoken knowledge that survival was far from guaranteed, and infection was a silent, deadly post-operative killer. For a unique and lesser-known detail, consider the electrical quacks of the 18th century. With a burgeoning understanding of electricity, some charlatans quickly incorporated it into their acts. You might encounter a doctor who promises to cure paralysis, gout, or even melancholy by passing mild electrical currents through your body. They would use primitive electrostatic generators, often large glass globes that spun to build up a charge, and then apply electrodes to the patient. The tingling sensation, the involuntary muscle contractions, and the sheer novelty of the experience were often enough to convince people that something profound was happening. You might feel a strange buzz, a jolt, and for a moment, perhaps the pain subsides, not because of any actual healing, but because your mind is so focused on the bizarre sensation. It's the 18th century equivalent of a wellness influencer selling you a biohacking device that just vibrates. Beyond amputations, other surgical interventions were equally brutal. Trepanation, the drilling of a hole in the skull, was performed for head injuries, madness, or even epilepsy, believed to release pressure or evil spirits. The success rate was predictably low, and the risks of brain damage and infection were incredibly high. You might witness a patient having a hole bored into their skull, the bone dust falling, the raw vulnerability of their brain exposed. It's a procedure that makes you want to cover your eyes, yet you can't look away from the sheer audacity of it. The charlatan's appeal wasn't just about their showmanship, it was also about accessibility. Unlike the formal physicians who might charge exorbitant fees and require you to come to their private residences, the quack brought their medicine directly to the people, often in public squares or at fairs. Their remedies were typically sold in small, affordable bottles, making them accessible to the common folk who couldn't afford the services of a regular doctor. This democratic approach to healthcare, however misguided, resonated deeply with a populace that felt neglected by the established medical community. You, a humble laborer, could afford a bottle of Dr. Wonderful's elixir for a few pennies. whereas a visit to a powdered physician might cost you a week's wages. For a unique and lesser-known detail, consider the practice of lithotomy for bladder stones. Bladder stones were a common and excruciating ailment, and the only known cure was surgical removal. The procedure involved inserting instruments into the bladder, often through the perineum, the area between the anus and genitals, to extract the stone. This was incredibly painful, prone to infection, and carried a high risk of incontinence or death. Imagine the agony of a bladder stone, and then the terror of knowing the cure involved a surgeon cutting into such a sensitive area without proper pain relief. You might hear the patient's screams echoing through the room, a stark reminder of the unspeakable pain endured for a chance at relief. It's a procedure that makes you clench your teeth just thinking about it. The academic debate still swirls around the motivations of these charlatans. Were they all cynical fraudsters, knowingly preying on the sick and desperate? Or were some genuinely deluded, truly believing in the efficacy of their bizarre concoctions? Perhaps having witnessed a few lucky coincidences or placebo effects. It's a nuanced question, as human nature is rarely purely one thing or another. You might see the glint of avarice in their eye, or you might see a flicker of genuine conviction, however misplaced. Perhaps it was a mixture of both, a potent cocktail of self-interest and self-deception. The academic debate still grapples with the ethical considerations of 18th century surgery. Given the lack of anesthesia, antisepsis, and understanding of infection, were these interventions truly beneficial? Or did they often cause more harm than good? While some immediate life-saving procedures like setting a broken bone or amputating a gangrenous limb were undeniably necessary, the high mortality rates from infection and shock raise questions about the overall efficacy and morality of many surgical practices. You, the patient, had little choice, but the historians still ponder the balance of suffering and perceived benefit. Their advertisements were everywhere, bold and often wildly exaggerated. You'd see handbills pasted on walls, broadsides proclaiming the wonders of their cures, and even small advertisements in the nascent newspapers. These ads would often feature testimonials from supposedly cured individuals, detailing their miraculous recoveries. "I was on my deathbed, afflicted with the king's evil and a consumption," one might read, "but after but 3 doses of Professor Potion's grand restorative, I am now restored to perfect health." Of course, there was no way to verify these claims, and you, reading them, would have to take them entirely on faith. It's the 18th century version of those suspiciously perfect 5-star reviews for a product you know can't possibly be that good. Bloodletting, which we touched upon earlier, was often performed by barber surgeons. It wasn't just a physician's prescription, it was a common surgical procedure. You might visit a barber for a haircut and leave with a few ounces less blood, all in the name of health. The practice was so ingrained that it was almost a routine part of life, a preventative measure as much as a cure. The sight of a barber surgeon's pole, with its red and white stripes, was a common one, symbolizing the dual nature of their trade haircutting and bloodletting. It's like going to your modern hairdresser and them offering to drain a pint of blood for good measure. The charlatans also understood the power of branding, even if they didn't call it that. Their remedies often had catchy, memorable names, like Daffy's Elixir, Godfrey's Cordial, or Turlington's Balsam of Life. These names became household words, passed down through generations, often outliving the original purveyors. You might hear your grandmother swear by a particular cordial, not knowing or caring about its dubious origins. This familiarity bred a sense of trust, a comfort in the known, even if the known was utterly ineffective. It's like how you still instinctively reach for that one brand of tea your parents always bought, even if there are objectively better ones out there. The post-operative care was almost as perilous as the surgery itself. Patients were often left in crowded, unsanitary conditions, with little understanding of wound care, infections, known then as hospital fever or surgical fever, were rampant and often fatal. A successful amputation could be followed by a slow, agonizing death from sepsis, a testament to the unseen enemies lurking in the air and on unwashed hands. You might survive the blade and only to succumb to the invisible killers that festered in the wound. The relief of the immediate procedure would quickly give way to the terrifying uncertainty of recovery, The sheer variety of ailments they claimed to cure was astounding. From venereal diseases to baldness, from melancholy to gout, from worms to the plague, no malady was too great or too small for their universal remedies. This broad-spectrum approach was part of their appeal. Why buy a specific cure when one bottle could fix everything? You might have a persistent cough and a touch of rheumatism, and the charlatan would assure you that their single elixir would address both, and perhaps even improve your eyesight and grow back your hair. It was the ultimate multitasker, a one-stop shop for all your medical woes. The social standing of surgeons was often lower than that of physicians. Physicians were seen as learned gentlemen, educated in universities, dealing with the theoretical aspects of medicine. Surgeons, on the other hand, were often considered manual laborers, associated with the messy, physical act of cutting. This class distinction reflected the prevailing view that surgery was a necessary evil, a last resort, rather than a refined medical art. You might respect the physician for their intellect, but you would fear the surgeon for their instruments. The ingredients in these miracle cures were often a bizarre and dangerous assortment. While we'll delve deeper into the specifics in the next section, it's worth noting here that many contained potent, addictive, or toxic substances, often without the knowledge of the consumer. Opium, mercury, lead, and arsenic were common components, providing immediate, albeit temporary, relief or producing dramatic, albeit harmful, physiological effects that were mistaken for healing. You might feel a sudden surge of energy or a profound calm, not realizing you were slowly poisoning yourself or becoming addicted. The immediate sensation was often prioritized over any long-term consequences. A dangerous gamble in a world where medical knowledge was so limited. The lack of effective pain management meant that patients often had to be physically restrained during surgery. Strong men would hold down the struggling patient, their muscles straining, their faces grim. The sounds of the struggle, combined with the sounds of the operation, would create a truly horrifying scene. You might hear the desperate pleas, the muffled screams, and the grunts of exertion, a symphony of suffering that would haunt your memories. It's a stark reminder of the sheer brutality of medical intervention before the advent of modern anesthetics. The rise of the charlatan also reflects a deeper societal shift. As cities grew and populations became more mobile, traditional community ties weakened. People were less likely to know their local healers intimately and more susceptible to the grand promises of a traveling showman. The anonymity of the city provided a perfect cover for those who sought to exploit the vulnerable. You, but new to the bustling metropolis, might not know who to trust, and the most vocal, most visible doctor might seem like your only option. It's a bit like how in a new city, you might end up at the flashiest, most heavily advertised restaurant, only to find the food is mediocre. The very concept of cure in surgery was often limited to immediate intervention. If a limb was gangrenous, amputation was a cure for the spread of infection, even if it meant permanent disability. If a foreign object was lodged in the body, its removal was a cure, regardless of the trauma inflicted. There was little understanding of long-term rehabilitation, pain management, or the psychological impact of such brutal procedures. You might be cured of one problem, only to be left with a lifetime of new ones. The theatricality extended beyond just the initial pitch. Many charlatans would also offer consultations after their public performances, where they would listen to your symptoms with a grave expression, perhaps feel your pulse, and then, with a knowing nod, prescribe a specific dosage of their universal remedy. This personalized touch, however superficial, added to their credibility. You would feel seen, heard, and understood. Even if the advice you received was utterly worthless, it's the human desire for connection and validation, even when it comes from someone who is, quite literally, selling snake oil. The development of surgical techniques was slow and incremental. Knowledge was often passed down through apprenticeship rather than formal scientific study. Each surgeon developed their own methods, often based on trial and error, with little systematic documentation or peer review. This meant that surgical practices varied widely, and what was considered standard procedure in one town might be unheard of in another. You were truly at the mercy of the individual surgeon's experience and skill. A terrifying lottery when your life was on the line. The impact of these charlatans on public health was predictably devastating. While some might have provided a temporary placebo effect, many caused direct harm through toxic ingredients or delayed proper treatment. People would spend their meager savings on these ineffective remedies, neglecting proven though still rudimentary medical practices or simply allowing their conditions to worsen. You might invest your last shilling in a bottle of cure-all, only to find yourself sicker than before, with no money left for food or shelter. It was a cruel cycle of hope, exploitation, and despair. The public's perception of surgery was, understandably, one of terror and dread. It was a last resort, a desperate gamble taken only when all other remedies had failed and death seemed imminent. People would often try every miracle cure, every potion and balm, before consenting to the surgeon's knife. The decision to undergo surgery was a momentous one, often made with a heavy heart and a sense of resignation. You might postpone the inevitable for as long as possible, clinging to any shred of hope that a less invasive remedy might work, knowing that the surgeon's blade offered a terrifying final solution. Yet, despite the obvious dangers, the charlatan persisted. Their resilience speaks to the enduring human need for hope in the face of suffering, and the powerful allure of a quick fix, in a world where genuine cures were rare and understanding was limited. The theatrical promises of the quack offered a comforting illusion of control. You, living in that era, might have been skeptical, but when faced with agonizing pain or the terrifying prospect of death, that small, desperate what-if could easily override your better judgment. It's a stark reminder that sometimes the greatest trick isn't in the cure itself, but in the belief that one exists. The legacy of these barbaric blades and bleeding bowls is a stark reminder of how far medicine has come. The courage of both the patients who endured such procedures and the surgeons who performed them, however crude their methods, is undeniable. They operated in an era of profound ignorance, doing their best with the limited tools and understanding available to them. You can only imagine the sheer relief, the profound gratitude of those few who survived such ordeals, emerging from the shadow of the blade with their lives, however scarred. Having witnessed the theatrical spectacle of the charlatan, you now find yourself confronted with the actual miracle cures they peddled. Forget the grand promises and the dazzling showmanship. It's time to peer into the murky depths of the bottles and powders that promise so much. The air, which once hummed with the charlatan's booming voice, now seems to carry a faint, acrid scent, a whisper of the strange and often dangerous substances you are about to encounter. You hold a small, corked bottle in your hand, its label adorned with ornate script and grand claims. But its contents remain a mystery, a dark liquid that sloshes ominously within. As you close your eyes, the chilling sounds of the 18th century operating room begin to fade. The metallic tang in the air dissipates, replaced by the quiet hum of your own breath. You are left with a deep appreciation for the advancements that have transformed surgery from a brutal, desperate gamble into a precise, life-saving science. The barbaric blades have been replaced by sterile scalpels, and the bleeding bowls by sophisticated instruments, all thanks to centuries of relentless scientific inquiry. And for that, you can truly rest easy. The ingredients in these 18th century elixirs were a testament to a world where scientific understanding was still in its infancy, and the line between medicine, alchemy, and outright superstition was incredibly blurred. You might find yourself staring at a list of components that reads more like a witch's brew than a pharmaceutical compound. Think about it: no chemical analysis, no quality control, no understanding of dosage or interaction. It was a free-for-all, a wild experiment where the human body was the unwitting laboratory. The sheer audacity of what people were willing to ingest or apply is truly astonishing. You've endured the chilling reality of 18th century surgery, the metallic tang of the blade still lingering in your mind. Now, as the echoes of screams and the grim determination of the barber-surgeon fade, prepare to witness a different kind of struggle, the slow, arduous clash between nascent medical science and the deeply entrenched world of spectacle and miracle cures. The air around you begins to feel less about immediate physical pain and more about intellectual ferment. A subtle but profound shift in the very fabric of understanding. You are about to observe the first tentative steps towards a more rational approach to healing. A journey fraught with resistance, ridicule, and the enduring power of popular belief. A common historical fact is the widespread use of opium in various forms. Laudanum, a tincture of opium dissolved in alcohol, was ubiquitous. You could buy it at apothecaries, grocers, and even from street vendors. It was prescribed for everything pain, coughs, diarrhea, insomnia, and even female complaints. Imagine the immediate, profound relief it offered from suffering in a world with no effective analgesics. You would feel a warm, fuzzy calm wash over you, the pain receding, the anxiety melting away. It was a true miracle for many, at least in the short term. The problem, of course, was the insidious addiction that followed. Many people, unknowingly, became dependent on laudanum, transforming their search for a cure into a lifelong struggle with withdrawal. It was like getting a free vacation, but the price was your soul. Imagine yourself in a lecture hall, perhaps at a burgeoning medical school in Edinburgh or Leiden. The room is filled with earnest, if sometimes misguided students, eagerly scribbling notes as a professor dissects a cadaver or expounds upon the latest theories of anatomy and physiology. This is a stark contrast to the boisterous spectacle of the charlatan's stage or the blood-soaked floor of the operating room. Here, the focus is on observation, experimentation, and systematic study, however rudimentary. You might feel a flicker of hope, a sense that perhaps, finally, understanding will replace guesswork. This is where the seeds of modern medicine are being sown, often in quiet defiance of centuries of tradition, beyond opium. The pharmacopoeia of the 18th century was a veritable cabinet of curiosities. You might encounter remedies containing everything from powdered animal parts to exotic herbs, from common household items to highly toxic minerals. The rationale behind these ingredients was often rooted in ancient beliefs, folk medicine, or simply wishful thinking. If something was rare, expensive, or came from a far-off land, it was often assumed to possess potent medicinal properties. The more obscure, the more magical it seemed. A common historical fact is the rise of anatomical studies and the increasing emphasis on empirical observation. While still far from perfect, 18th century medical schools began to prioritize direct observation of the human body, both living and deceased, over ancient texts and purely theoretical knowledge. Physicians like William Hunter in London and Hermann Boerhaave in Leiden championed a more systematic approach to understanding disease. Imagine attending a public dissection, a gruesome but vital learning experience, where the internal workings of the human body are laid bare. You would see the intricate network of veins and arteries, the delicate structure of organs, and begin to grasp the complexity of the human machine. This direct observation, however shocking, was a crucial step away from the abstract theories of humors and miasmas. Slowly eroding the foundations of traditional cures, it's like finally opening up the hood of a broken car instead of just kicking the tires and hoping it starts. For a unique and lesser-known detail, consider the use of mummy powder. Yes, you heard that right. Ground-up ancient Egyptian mummies were believed to possess medicinal properties, particularly for conditions like epilepsy, paralysis, and various internal ailments. The belief stemmed from the idea that the life force or spirit of the deceased, preserved within the mummy, could be transferred to the living. You might be offered a pinch of dark, dusty powder, told it came from a pharaoh, and be expected to swallow it. The taste, one can only imagine, would be less than appealing, and the actual health benefits, well, let's just say they were non-existent, unless you count the potential for contracting ancient pathogens. It's like believing that eating a piece of an old car will make you a better driver. The struggle was not just intellectual, it was also social and economic. The established physicians, often university-trained, viewed the charlatans and their miracle cures with disdain and contempt. They saw them as uneducated frauds, preying on the vulnerable and undermining the dignity of their profession. Yet, these charlatans often commanded larger audiences and made more money, appealing directly to the desperate masses who found formal medicine inaccessible or ineffective. You would witness the sneering contempt of a powdered physician as a quack's carriage rolled by, but also the eager faces of the crowd flocking to the quack, a testament to the enduring power of popular appeal over academic rigor. It's a bit like a Michelin-starred chef scoffing at a popular fast food chain, even as the lines stretch around the block. The academic debate continues to explore the extent to which the 18th century public understood the addictive properties of substances like opium. While some physicians and apothecaries were aware of the potential for dependency, the widespread availability and casual use suggests that the general public often did not grasp the full implications. Were they simply ignorant? Or did the immediate relief outweigh any perceived long-term risks in a world where life itself was so precarious? You taking your daily dose of laudanum for a persistent cough might just be grateful for the quiet sleep it brings, oblivious to the chains it is forging around you. For a unique and lesser-known detail, consider the early attempts at medical societies and journals. Towards the latter half of the 18th century, groups of physicians began to form societies, sharing observations, discussing cases, and publishing their findings in nascent medical journals. This was a crucial step towards standardizing medical knowledge and peer review. However informal, imagine a group of learned men gathered in a smoky room, earnestly debating the efficacy of a new treatment or critiquing the claims of a popular miracle cure. This was the very beginning of a scientific community, slowly but surely building a collective body of knowledge that could challenge individual anecdote and widespread superstition. You might stumble upon a dusty copy of a medical journal, filled with detailed case studies and cautious conclusions, a stark contrast to the bombastic claims of the charlatans' handbills. It's like the first few whispers of a serious conversation finally breaking through the noise of a carnival. Many miracle cures also contained high levels of alcohol. This wasn't just a solvent, it was often a primary active ingredient, providing a temporary sense of well-being, dulling pain, and inducing sleep. These cordials and elixirs were essentially alcoholic beverages marketed as medicine. You could get your daily dose of spirits disguised as a health tonic, a convenient way to self-medicate or simply escape the harsh realities of life. The warm glow in your stomach, the loosening of your limbs, the temporary oblivion, it all contributed to the illusion of healing. It's like a doctor prescribing you a shot of whiskey for your broken leg, and then charging you for the medicinal properties. The academic debate still questions the true speed and impact of this scientific awakening. While anatomical and physiological knowledge certainly advanced, how quickly did these advancements translate into genuinely effective treatments for common diseases? And how much did the average person's medical experience actually change during this period? Just living in the 18th century might see a new theory emerge, but still find yourself relying on the same old remedies, or trying the latest miracle cure out of sheer desperation. The gap between scientific discovery and practical application was often vast, and the inertia of tradition was a powerful force. Then there were the purges and emetics. Many remedies aimed to cleanse the body of impurities, often by inducing violent vomiting or diarrhea. Ingredients like antimony, ipecacuanha, and various strong laxatives were common. While occasionally useful in specific circumstances, their indiscriminate use often left patients severely dehydrated and weakened. You might spend hours in agonizing discomfort, convinced that the expulsion of bodily fluids was a sign of the disease leaving your system, when in reality, you were simply depleting your body's resources. It was a truly unpleasant experience, often leaving you feeling worse than before. But with the grim satisfaction that you had purged the illness, the emerging scientific method, however crude, began to challenge the very foundations of the miracle cure industry. Instead of relying on anecdotal evidence or mystical explanations, early scientists sought to understand cause and effect, to test hypotheses, and to replicate results. This approach slowly chipped away at the credibility of remedies based on superstition or unproven claims. You would hear whispers of experiments and observations, terms that sounded foreign and perhaps a little frightening, but which promised a more reliable path to understanding. It was a slow, grinding battle between the intuitive and the empirical, and the intuitive had a significant head start. The use of plant-based remedies was also prevalent, ranging from genuinely beneficial herbs to those that were inert or even toxic. Digitalis, derived from the foxglove plant, was used for heart conditions, though its dosage was poorly understood, leading to frequent poisonings. Belladonna, or deadly nightshade, was used as a sedative and pain reliever, but its highly toxic nature meant that a slight miscalculation could be fatal. You might be given a concoction of herbs, some of which might genuinely help, others that do nothing, and some that could send you spiraling into a dangerous delirium. It was a botanical lottery, and your life was the prize. The resistance to these new ideas was fierce. Many traditional practitioners, invested in the old ways, dismissed the newfangled scientific approaches as impractical or even dangerous. The public, too, often preferred the comforting familiarity of established remedies, however ineffective, or the dramatic promises of the charlatan over the cautious, often uncertain pronouncements of the emerging scientists. You might hear people grumbling about the coldness of scientific medicine, preferring the warmth of a familiar potion, even if it contained mercury. Change, especially when it challenges deeply held beliefs about health and healing, is always met with skepticism. Consider the role of a sympathetic magic in some of these potions. The idea that like cures like, or that a substance could transfer its properties to the patient, was deeply ingrained. For instance, some believed that consuming powdered animal parts from a strong or fast animal would impart those qualities to the weak or slow, or that a plant resembling a particular organ could cure ailments of that organ. You might be advised to consume a potion containing powdered staghorn for strength, or a root shaped like a human limb for a bone ailment. It was less about biochemistry and more about poetic association, a charming but ultimately ineffective approach to healing. The development of new instruments, however simple, also marked a shift. The thermometer, for instance, began to be used more widely to measure fever, providing an objective measure of a patient's condition, rather than relying solely on subjective feeling. The microscope, though still rudimentary, allowed for the first glimpses into the unseen world of microorganisms, laying the groundwork for germ theory, even if its full implications were centuries away. You might see a physician carefully placing a thermometer under a patient's arm, a small, seemingly insignificant act, but one that represented a giant leap towards objective diagnosis. It's like finally getting a speedometer in your car after years of just guessing your speed. The lack of standardized measurements was another critical issue. A dose might be described as a spoonful, a pinch, or as much as fits on the tip of a knife. These vague instructions meant that the actual amount of active ingredient varied wildly, leading to unpredictable results. One spoonful could be harmless, the next could be lethal. You were essentially playing Russian roulette with your health, each dose a spin of the chamber. It's like baking a cake where the recipe says a bit of flour and some sugar. Good luck with that. The role of hospitals also began to evolve, however slowly. While still often places of last resort and high mortality, some hospitals began to incorporate more systematic observation and teaching. They became centers where medical students could learn from direct patient contact and where new ideas could be tested, albeit in a chaotic environment. You might be admitted to a hospital, not just to die, but with the faint hope that the collective knowledge of its practitioners might offer a chance at recovery, a stark contrast to the isolated, often secret practices of the charlatans. The charlatans often guarded their recipes with extreme secrecy, adding to the mystique and perceived power of their remedies. They would claim their formulas were ancient, passed down through generations, or revealed to them in a dream. This secrecy prevented any independent verification or scientific analysis, allowing them to perpetuate their claims without scrutiny. You wouldn't find a list of ingredients on the bottle, just a grand name and a promise. It was a clever marketing ploy, ensuring that their magic remained just that, unexplained and therefore, in the eyes of the desperate, all the more potent. The public health movement, though nascent, also began to emerge. Concerns about sanitation, clean water, and the spread of infectious diseases started to gain traction, however slowly, while the underlying causes of disease were still poorly understood. The idea that environmental factors played a role began to challenge the notion that all illness was a matter of individual humors or divine punishment. You would hear discussions about draining swamps, cleaning streets, and improving ventilation. Small steps that would eventually lead to significant improvements in public health, far more effective than any miracle cure. It's like realizing that instead of just patching up leaky pipes, you should probably just fix the main water line. The profit motive was, of course, a huge driving force. These miracle cures were often cheap to produce but sold at exorbitant prices, making their purveyors incredibly wealthy. The lack of regulation meant there was no oversight on pricing or claims. You might spend a significant portion of your meager income on a small bottle of colored water and alcohol, hoping it would save your life, while the charlatan laughed all the way to the bank. It was a lucrative business, built on the back of human suffering and credulity. The clash was often personified in public debates and pamphlets. Physicians would publish critiques of popular patent medicines, exposing their fraudulent claims and dangerous ingredients. Charlatans, in turn, would respond with their own pamphlets, attacking the ignorance and elitism of the medical establishment. This intellectual sparring, however heated, served to raise public awareness and force a critical examination of medical practices. You might read a pamphlet denouncing a popular elixir, then another defending it, leaving you to sift through the rhetoric and decide who to believe. It was a battle for the hearts and minds, and wallets, of the ailing public. The psychological component of these potions cannot be overstated. Even if the ingredients were inert or harmful, the act of taking a medicine, especially one so grandly advertised, could induce a powerful placebo effect. The belief in the cure, the hope it engendered, could genuinely alleviate symptoms, at least temporarily. You might feel better simply because you expected to feel better, a testament to the incredible power of the human mind. This made it even harder to distinguish between genuine healing and the fleeting comfort of self-deception. It's like when you feel better just by making a doctor's appointment, even before you've seen them. The concept of clinical trials, though not formalized as such, began to take shape. Physicians would sometimes experiment with different treatments on groups of patients, observing and comparing outcomes. While these trials lacked the rigor of modern scientific studies, they represented a crucial step towards evidence-based medicine, moving away from purely anecdotal evidence or traditional belief. You might be part of a group receiving a new treatment, unknowingly participating in one of the earliest forms of medical research. Your body a data point in the slow march towards understanding. The 18th century was also an era of burgeoning global trade, which meant new and exotic ingredients were constantly being introduced. While some, like quinine from cinchona bark, proved genuinely effective against malaria, others were incorporated into cures with little to no understanding of their properties. Spices, resins, and strange botanical specimens from distant lands found their way into these potions. Adding to their allure and perceived efficacy, you might be told your elixir contains a rare root from the Amazon, or a mystical berry from the Himalayas, adding a touch of exoticism to your impending doom. The growing skepticism towards supernatural explanations for disease also contributed to the decline of purely superstitious cures. As the Enlightenment emphasized reason and empirical observation, the belief that illness was caused by curses, evil spirits, or divine displeasure began to wane, replaced by a search for natural, physical causes. This intellectual shift created a more fertile ground for scientific inquiry and a less receptive audience for remedies based solely on magic or faith. You would hear fewer tales of demonic possession causing illness and more discussions about bodily functions. A subtle but profound change in worldview. The legacy of these peculiar potions extends even into the early 19th century. Many of these patent medicines, as they came to be known, continued to be sold for decades, even after more scientific medical understanding began to emerge. The public's trust, once earned or manipulated, was hard to break. You might find your grandchildren still using a remedy your great-grandmother swore by, a testament to the enduring power of tradition and anecdotal evidence over scientific fact. The long-term impact of this clash was profound. While the 18th century was still dominated by ignorance and dangerous practices, it was also the crucible in which modern medicine began to forge itself. The persistent efforts of early scientists, however few and far between, laid the groundwork for the revolutionary discoveries of the 19th and 20th centuries. The slow, grinding battle against superstition and fraud would eventually lead to a world where genuine cures, based on scientific understanding, became a reality. Ultimately, the peculiar and perilous potions of the 18th century are a stark reminder of a time when the search for healing was a desperate gamble. You, the patient, were at the mercy of ignorance, greed, and a profound lack of scientific understanding. Each bottle held not just a liquid, but a fragile hope, a dangerous promise, and often a hidden threat. As you set down the empty bottle, that you can only hope that whatever relief it offered was worth the unknown risks you just took. And perhaps you might even feel a little bit lucky to be living in an era where medicine, for all its imperfections, is at least based on something more substantial than powdered mummies and wishful thinking. As you drift into a deeper slumber, consider the quiet heroes of this era, the dedicated anatomists, the meticulous observers, the cautious experimenters. They may not have had the dazzling showmanship of the charlatans, or the brutal efficiency of the surgeons, but they possess something far more powerful, the unwavering belief in the power of reason and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. Their struggle, often unseen and uncelebrated, slowly but surely began to illuminate the dark corners of medical ignorance, paving the way for a future where true healing was not a miracle, but a science. And for that, you can truly rest, knowing that the light of understanding was beginning to break through. You've seen the showmanship, you've glimpsed the bizarre ingredients, and now you're about to confront the truly perilous side of 18th century miracle cures, the widespread and often fatal use of heavy metals and minerals. The faint, acrid scent you noticed earlier, it might just be the metallic tang of mercury, or the subtle, sweetish whiff of lead, substances that were once considered the height of medical sophistication. You stand at the precipice of a dangerous experiment, where the very elements of the earth, misunderstood and mishandled, become instruments of both desperate hope and unwitting destruction. You've witnessed the fierce intellectual battle between nascent science and entrenched superstition, a clash that slowly began to chip away at the dominance of miracle cures. Now, as the echoes of those debates fade into a gentle hum, prepare to observe a new, equally arduous struggle, the hesitant dawn of regulation. The air around you feels less charged with grand theories and more with the quiet, persistent whispers of reason, the slow, grinding effort to bring order to the chaotic world of 18th century medicine. You are about to see the first tentative steps taken to curb medical fraud, a journey fraught with powerful vested interests, public resistance, and the sheer difficulty of distinguishing true healing from elaborate deception. Imagine the alchemist's laboratory, not just a place of mystical transmutation, but also the birthplace of many 18th century remedies. Here, substances like mercury, arsenic, and lead, known for their dramatic effects, were eagerly embraced. The thinking was often rooted in the idea of powerful, transformative agents. If something could cause a violent reaction, surely it possessed the power to expel disease. Right. This logic, flawed as it was, led to a medical landscape where the cure could be far more damaging than the original ailment. You might be told that the metallic taste in your mouth is a sign of the bad humors leaving your body, when in reality, it's your body reacting to poison. Imagine yourself in a bustling London coffee house, not for gossip or trade, but to overhear hushed conversations among concerned citizens and a few forward-thinking physicians. They speak of charlatans who have left a trail of ruined health and empty pockets, of universal panaceas that prove to be nothing more than poison. There's a growing unease, a collective weariness with the endless parade of quacks and their outlandish claims. This isn't just about intellectual skepticism, it's about a rising tide of public indignation, a demand for accountability in a realm where life and death hang in the balance. You might hear a merchant recount how his sister was swindled, or a gentleman lament the death of a friend after taking a dubious elixir. The sentiment is clear: something must be done. A common historical fact is the extensive use of mercury. Known as quicksilver, mercury was a favored remedy for a vast array of conditions, most notably syphilis, but also for skin diseases, intestinal parasites, and even melancholy. It was administered in various forms, ingested as pills, applied as ointments, or even inhaled as vapor. The immediate effects could seem miraculous. For syphilis, mercury often brought about a temporary remission of symptoms, leading practitioners to believe it was a true cure. You might experience profuse salivation, sweating, and vomiting, all interpreted as the body expelling the disease. The problem, of course, was that mercury is a potent neurotoxin. Prolonged exposure led to tremors, madness, tooth loss, and eventually death. It was a slow, agonizing descent into madness, all in the name of healing. It's like trying to fix a leaky roof by setting your house on fire. Technically, the leak stops, but at what cost? A common historical fact is the emergence of early patent medicine acts and regulations, albeit limited and often ineffective. While comprehensive medical licensing boards were still a distant dream, some governments and medical bodies began to enact laws aimed at controlling the sale of medicines and the claims made by their purveyors. For instance, in Britain, the Stamp Act of 1783, though primarily a revenue-raising measure, required a stamp duty on all patent medicines, effectively acknowledging and taxing their existence. This meant that while the government wasn't necessarily vouching for their efficacy, it was at least regulating their sale and making them a source of income. Imagine a government official meticulously affixing a stamp to a bottle of Dr. Cure-All's elixir, not because they believe in its healing powers, but because they believe in collecting taxes. It's like the government finally admitting that if you can't beat them, you might as well tax them. Beyond mercury, arsenic was another popular, albeit deadly, ingredient. Often found in Fowler's solution, a concoction of potassium arsenite. It was prescribed for fevers, skin conditions, and even as a general tonic, small doses could indeed have a stimulating effect, leading to a temporary feeling of improved health. The danger, however, lay in its cumulative toxicity. Over time, arsenic poisoning would manifest as gastrointestinal distress, nerve damage, and eventually organ failure. You might feel a burst of energy after a dose, attributing it to the elixir, not realizing you were slowly accumulating a deadly poison in your system. It's the ultimate slow burn, where the fire is inside you. The initial attempts at regulation were often driven by a combination of public outcry, the lobbying efforts of established medical professionals, and sometimes the desire of authorities to maintain order and prevent widespread fraud. Physicians, frustrated by the erosion of their own credibility and the blatant deceit of the quacks, began to advocate for stricter controls. They argued that the unregulated market was not only dangerous to public health, but also brought disrepute to the entire medical profession. You would hear their impassioned pleas in pamphlets and public lectures, arguing for a more structured, ethical approach to healthcare. For a unique and lesser-known detail, best consider the use of antimony. While less famous than mercury or arsenic, antimony was widely used as an emetic and purgative. The most notorious form was the antimonial cup, or everlasting pill. This was a small metallic cup made of antimony, or a pill made from the metal, which would induce vomiting and diarrhea when wine or water was left in it overnight. The beauty of it, from an 18th century perspective, was that the cup or pill could be reused indefinitely, making it a truly everlasting remedy. You could pass it down through generations, a family heirloom of perpetual purging. Imagine your great-grandmother handing down a cup that literally made you sick, believing it was a gift of health. It's the original gift that keeps on giving. If giving means making you violently ill, for a unique and lesser-known detail, consider the role of public shaming and satirical prints in curbing medical fraud. Before formal regulations were widespread, artists and writers often used satire to expose and ridicule charlatans. Caricatures depicting quacks as greedy, ignorant figures, surrounded by their gullible victims, were popular and widely circulated. These prints, often crude but effective, served to warn the public and undermine the credibility of fraudulent practitioners. Imagine seeing a vivid, exaggerated drawing of a charlatan with a ridiculously large nose, pouring a toxic liquid down the throat of a sickly patient, while clutching a bag of money. You might chuckle, but the underlying message would be clear: this person is a cheat. It's the 18th century equivalent of a viral social media post exposing a scam. But with more powdered wigs and less internet, the academic debate still questions the precise understanding of toxicity among 18th century medical practitioners. While they observed the dramatic effects of these heavy metals, did they truly grasp the long-term, insidious harm they inflicted? Or did they simply consider the immediate, visible reactions as a proof of efficacy, a sign that the body was being cleansed? You, the patient, certainly had no way of knowing. You trusted the person in charge, even if their methods seemed intense. The academic debate still questions the true effectiveness of these early regulatory attempts. Did they genuinely deter fraud? Or did they merely push it underground or force charlatans to become more cunning in their deceptions? While some notorious quacks might have been driven out of business, many simply adapted, finding new loopholes or moving to less regulated areas. You, observing the scene, might see one charlatan disappear, only for another, equally audacious, to take their place. A testament to the enduring demand for quick fixes and the difficulty of stamping out deeply ingrained practices. Lead, another heavy metal, also found its way into various remedies. Lead acetate, known as sugar of lead due to its sweet taste, was used in ointments for skin conditions and sometimes even ingested for internal ailments. The sweetness masked its deadly nature. Chronic lead poisoning, like mercury poisoning, led to a host of debilitating symptoms: abdominal pain, constipation, nerve damage, and cognitive impairment. You might apply a soothing ointment to a rash, finding temporary relief, while unknowingly absorbing a neurotoxin through your skin. It was a Trojan horse of a cure, sweet on the outside, poison within. The concept of patent medicines itself was a double-edged sword for regulation. While the patent system was designed to protect inventors, it also inadvertently lent a veneer of legitimacy to many dubious remedies. By granting a patent, the government wasn't endorsing the medicine's efficacy, but it did give the proprietor exclusive rights to its sale, making it appear as if the product had official sanction. You might see a patent document proudly displayed by a charlatan, leading you to believe that their miracle cure had been officially approved, when in reality, it simply meant they had registered their concoction. It's like getting a copyright for a bad song. It doesn't make it good, just legally protected. The appeal of these toxic tonics lay partly in their dramatic effects. When you took a dose of mercury, the immediate and often violent reactions, the salivation, the vomiting, the sweating, were interpreted as the body actively fighting off the disease. This visible expulsion of fluids and discomfort was seen as proof that the medicine was working, that it was drawing out the illness. In a time when the internal workings of the body were largely a mystery, a tangible, dramatic response was often more convincing than a subtle, gradual improvement. You might feel utterly wretched, but at least you knew something was happening. The resistance to regulation came from powerful quarters. The proprietors of patent medicines were often wealthy and influential, with significant financial interests in maintaining the unregulated status quo. They would lobby against stricter laws, argue for individual liberty, and appeal to the public's desire for affordable, accessible remedies, however ineffective. They might even fund their own pamphlets, countering the claims of the medical establishment and portraying themselves as champions of the common person against an elitist medical monopoly. You would hear their arguments, often cloaked in rhetoric about freedom and choice, making it difficult to discern their true motives. The lack of scientific instruments for precise measurement or analysis meant that the purity and consistency of these mineral remedies were highly variable. A batch of mercury might be purer or more contaminated than another, leading to wildly different outcomes for patients. There was no way to standardize dosage or ensure that what you were getting was what was advertised. You were at the mercy of the supplier, the apothecary, and the charlatan, each with their own methods and standards, or lack thereof. It was like buying ingredients for a recipe, but half of them are rotten and you have no idea which ones. The very definition of medicine and fraud was also a contentious issue. In a time when the scientific basis of healing was so poorly understood, it was genuinely difficult to draw a clear line between a legitimate, albeit ineffective, remedy and an outright scam. What constituted proof of efficacy was anecdotal evidence enough. These were complex questions that early regulators grappled with, often without clear answers. You might see a judge struggling to decide whether a particular elixir was a genuine attempt at healing or deliberate deception, highlighting the murky legal landscape of the era. The belief in the heroic nature of medicine also played a role. Many practitioners believed that powerful diseases required equally powerful, even violent, remedies. The idea was to shock the body into healing, to overwhelm the illness with a potent counterforce. This philosophy encouraged the use of highly toxic substances, as their dramatic effects aligned with the heroic approach. You weren't just taking medicine, you were engaging in a battle. And these metals were your heavy artillery, even if they often caused friendly fire. The role of professional medical organizations, like the Royal College of Physicians in London, also grew in importance. They sought to establish standards for medical education, licensing, and ethical conduct, effectively creating a distinction between trained practitioners and untrained quacks. While their authority was often limited, and their reach didn't extend to all corners of society, They represented a crucial institutional force pushing for greater accountability and scientific rigor. You might aspire to be treated by a physician with the letters FRCP, Fellow of the Royal College of Physicians, after their name, knowing it signified a certain level of training and professionalism, however imperfect. The social context also contributed to their prevalence. In a world where infectious diseases ravaged populations and effective treatments were scarce, people were willing to take extreme measures. The fear of death was a powerful motivator, pushing individuals to embrace any remedy, no matter how dangerous, if it offered even a sliver of hope. You might hear stories of someone miraculously recovering after taking a mercury purge, and that single anecdote would outweigh any number of silent deaths caused by the same treatment. Hope, in this context, was a dangerous drug itself, the public's own skepticism, slowly cultivated by the failures of countless miracle cures and the growing awareness of fraud, also contributed to the demand for regulation. People were becoming more discerning, more wary of grand promises, and more willing to question authority. This rising tide of critical thinking, fueled by the Enlightenment, provided a fertile ground for regulatory efforts to take root. You might find yourself less inclined to believe the next traveling charlatan, having been burned by too many empty promises. The charlatans, of course, capitalized on this desperation. They would often exaggerate the potency of their metallic ingredients, claiming they had harnessed the very essence of the Earth's power. They would speak of mineral spirits and elemental forces, adding a mystical aura to their dangerous concoctions. This made the remedies seem even more powerful and therefore more desirable to a public yearning for effective solutions. You might be told that the shimmering quality of the liquid in the bottle was the spirit of quicksilver at work, ready to banish your ailments. The concept of transparency in medicine, though rudimentary, also began to emerge. There were calls for ingredients to be listed, for claims to be substantiated, and for remedies to be subjected to some form of public scrutiny. This was a radical idea in an era where secret formulas and proprietary blends were the norm. While full transparency was still centuries away, these early demands represented a significant step towards consumer protection and informed choice. You might wish that the bottle you just bought had a clear list of its contents. Rather than just vague promises, it's important to remember that not all uses of these minerals were entirely without basis, though their understanding was rudimentary. For instance, some forms of iron were used for anemia, though the mechanism was unknown. However, the indiscriminate and often excessive use of highly toxic metals far outweighed any occasional accidental benefit. The line between beneficial mineral and deadly poison was often blurred, with devastating consequences for the patient. The long-term impact of these early regulatory steps, however small, was profound. They laid the groundwork for the more comprehensive medical reforms of the 19th and 20th centuries, leading to the establishment of modern drug regulation, licensing bodies, and consumer protection laws. The slow, grinding battle against medical fraud was a continuous process, but these initial whispers of reason marked a crucial turning point. They signified a societal shift from passively accepting any promise of healing to actively demanding accountability and scientific validation. The legacy of these toxic tonics lingered for a surprisingly long time. Even as medical science slowly advanced in the 19th century, the appeal of quick, dramatic cures, even dangerous ones, remained. The public's trust, once placed in these powerful substances, was hard to shake. You might see remnants of these practices in later patent medicines, still containing dubious ingredients, a testament to how deeply ingrained these beliefs became. As you drift into a deeper, more peaceful sleep, consider the quiet determination of those who first dared to challenge the chaos of 18th century medicine. Their efforts, often met with ridicule and resistance, were the first flickering lights in a long, dark night of medical ignorance and exploitation. They sought not just to heal the sick, but to protect the vulnerable, to bring order to a disordered world, and to ensure that the promise of a cure was rooted in something more substantial than mere spectacle. And for that, you can truly rest, knowing that the long, slow march towards a safer, more ethical approach to healing had finally begun. As you consider the fate of those who ingested these perilous potions, a shiver runs down your spine. The promise of a miracle, delivered in a spoonful of liquid or a small pill, often led to a slow, agonizing decline. The very substances meant to heal became the instruments of destruction, leaving behind a trail of ruined health and shattered lives. You can only imagine the confusion and despair of those who, having put their faith and their meager savings into these cures, found themselves not recovering but deteriorating, their bodies slowly succumbing to the very remedies they hoped would save them. It's a chilling reminder that in the absence of true knowledge, the most dangerous thing is often misplaced hope. You've witnessed the slow, arduous dawn of medical regulation, a faint flicker of order in a chaotic world. Now, as the whispers of reason settle into a quiet hum, prepare to reflect on the enduring legacy of miracle cures and their surprising reflections in our own time. The air around you feels less like a historical journey and more like a gentle, introspective breeze, carrying echoes from the past that resonate with the present. You are about to discover that while the specific concoctions and flamboyant charlatans of the 18th century may be gone, the underlying human desires they exploited and the illusions they perpetuated remain remarkably persistent. You've navigated the treacherous waters of toxic tonics, and now, as you continue your journey through the bizarre medical landscape of the 18th century, prepare yourself for a truly unsavory chapter, the world of animal-derived concoctions. The air around you seems to thicken with a new, unsettling aroma, perhaps a hint of something musky, something gamey, or even something faintly putrid. You might find yourself wrinkling your nose, but in this era of desperation, no ingredient, no matter how repulsive, is off limits if it promises a glimmer of healing. You are about to discover that the animal kingdom, in all its forms, was seen not just as a source of food or labor, but as a vast, living pharmacy. Imagine yourself scrolling through a modern social media feed, bombarded not by handbills plastered on walls, but by polished advertisements for superfoods, detox teas, or biohacking supplements. The language is different, more scientific sounding. Perhaps, but the promises often echo those of the 18th century quacks: rapid weight loss, boundless energy, eternal youth, or a cure for chronic ailments that conventional medicine struggles with. You might find yourself pausing, a tiny seed of hope sprouting in your mind, wondering if this latest trend holds the key to your well-being. The packaging is sleek, the testimonials are glowing, and the influencers are charismatic. But the fundamental appeal to desperation and the promise of an easy fix are strikingly familiar. Imagine the sheer variety of creatures that contributed to these miracle cures. From the noble stag to the humble earthworm, from the venomous snake to the common housefly, almost every animal part, from blood and bones to excrement and bile, was believed to possess some medicinal property. The logic, if one can call it that, was often rooted in ancient beliefs, sympathetic magic, or simply the observation of an animal's perceived characteristics. If a creature was strong, perhaps its essence could impart strength. If it was long-lived, maybe it held the secret to longevity. You might stumble upon an apothecary's shelf laden not just with dried herbs and mineral powders, but with jars containing preserved animal organs, dried insects, or even vials of animal blood. It's less a medical dispensary and more a taxidermy shop. But for your insides, a common historical fact is the cyclical nature of medical fads and the enduring human susceptibility to quick fixes. Throughout history, from ancient remedies to modern supplements, people have always sought simple solutions to complex health problems. The 18th century had its universal panaceas, and today, we have our miracle diets and cure-all supplements. Think about the sheer volume of products marketed as detoxes or cleanses today. While the specific ingredients are different, no more mummy powder. Thankfully, the underlying concept that you can rapidly purge your body of unspecified toxins to achieve perfect health is a direct echo of the 18th century purges. You're still trying to get rid of bad humors, just with fancier packaging and a higher price tag. It's like updating your phone, but the apps are still crashing. A common historical fact is the widespread use of unicorn horn powder. Of course, genuine unicorn horns didn't exist, but the powdered tusks of narwhals were often sold as such. This unicorn horn was considered a powerful antidote to poisons and a cure for various fevers and convulsions. Imagine the immense value placed on this mythical substance, believed to be imbued with magical healing properties. You might be told that a tiny pinch of this precious powder, dissolved in water, would ward off any illness, or even revive you from the brink of death. The irony, of course, is that you were paying a fortune for ground-up whale tooth, with no actual medicinal benefit, unless you count the placebo effect of believing you'd consumed something truly legendary. It's like buying a diamond that's actually just a very shiny piece of glass, but you're convinced it's real. The allure of the anecdotal remains incredibly powerful. Just as in the 18th century, where a neighbor's story of a miraculous recovery from Dr. Wonderful's elixir could sway public opinion. Today, a glowing testimonial from an online stranger or a celebrity endorsement can drive sales of unproven remedies. You might read a comment section filled with people swearing by a particular supplement, convinced it cured their chronic fatigue or improved their skin, and that collective belief can be incredibly persuasive, even in the absence of scientific evidence. We are still, at our core, story-driven creatures, and a compelling narrative of healing often outweighs a dry scientific study. Beyond mythical creatures, more mundane animals provided a surprising array of remedies. Consider the use of crab's eyes, which were not actual eyes, but calcareous concretions found in the stomachs of crayfish. These were ground into a powder and used as an antacid and absorbent, believed to neutralize stomach acids and treat digestive complaints. You might be given a spoonful of this chalky powder for your indigestion, a surprisingly benign remedy compared to some of the others. It's a rare instance where the animal-derived cure wasn't actively harmful, just derived from a very unexpected source. For a unique and lesser-known detail, consider the modern phenomenon of wellness gurus who operate outside the established medical system, much like the charlatans of old. These individuals often cultivate a charismatic online presence, share personal anecdotes of overcoming illness, often with unproven methods, and build devoted followings. They might host expensive retreats, sell proprietary blends of herbs, or offer personalized health plans that are not based on scientific evidence. While they don't typically stand on a stage in the town square, their reach through social media can be global, allowing them to bypass traditional regulatory scrutiny and directly appeal to a vast audience. Imagine a modern-day charlatan, but instead of a velvet coat, they wear designer activewear, and instead of a horse-drawn carriage, they have a private jet. It's the same old snake oil, just delivered with better Wi-Fi. For a unique and lesser-known detail, delve into the world of viper's flesh. The flesh of vipers, particularly their hearts, was believed to be a powerful remedy for various ailments, including leprosy, plague, and even as a general tonic for vitality. The idea was that the viper's venom, though deadly, also contained a powerful life force that, when consumed in a controlled manner, could counteract disease. You might witness a live viper being prepared, its heart quickly removed and then dried or powdered for consumption. The thought of ingesting the flesh of a venomous snake might turn your stomach, but the desperate belief in its curative powers often outweighed any revulsion. It's a truly visceral example of the like-cures-like philosophy, but with a potentially very dangerous twist. The academic debate still actively explores the psychological mechanisms that make people susceptible to unproven health claims, even in an age of abundant scientific information. Is it a lack of critical thinking, a deep-seated distrust of conventional medicine, or simply the enduring human desire for hope and control in the face of illness? You, bombarded by conflicting health advice, might find yourself feeling overwhelmed, and in that confusion, the simple, confident promise of a miracle cure can be incredibly appealing. The human brain, it seems, is still wired to seek shortcuts, especially when it comes to suffering. The academic debate still ponders the precise origins and persistence of these animal-based remedies. Were they purely superstitious, passed down through generations of folk medicine, or did some observations of animal behavior or physiology, however misinterpreted, contribute to their perceived efficacy? Observing your neighbor consume a concoction made from dried pigeon droppings for their jaundice might wonder if there's any logic to it, or if it's just a desperate gamble. The profit motive, too, remains a powerful driving force. The global wellness industry is a multi-billion-dollar market, fueled by the same desire for health and vitality that drove the sales of 18th-century elixirs. Products with vague claims, proprietary blends, and inflated prices continue to proliferate, often with little to no regulatory oversight compared to pharmaceutical drugs. You might spend hundreds of dollars on a month's supply of a superfood powder, convinced it will transform your health, while the companies behind them rake in massive profits, much like the wealthy proprietors of patent medicines centuries ago. It's a timeless business model: sell hope, make money, animal excrement. Surprisingly, also featured prominently in some remedies. Album gracum, or white dog dung, was used for sore throats and inflammation. Dried pigeon droppings were used for jaundice and other liver complaints. The logic was often tied to the idea of purification or the expulsion of toxins. You might be instructed to mix a small amount of dried animal waste with water and drink it, believing it would cleanse your internal organs. The taste, one can only imagine, would be truly horrifying. A potent reminder of the lengths people would go to in their search for health. It's the ultimate bottom-of-the-barrel cure in every sense of the phrase. The distrust of established institutions, whether government or medical, also plays a role in the enduring appeal of alternative remedies. Just as some 18th century citizens viewed physicians as elitist or ineffective, some modern individuals express skepticism towards pharmaceutical companies, doctors, or scientific consensus. This distrust can push people towards less regulated, often unproven, alternatives, where they feel more in control or believe they are accessing hidden truths. You might hear people speak of big pharma conspiracies or natural cures being suppressed, echoing the charlatans' rhetoric about the medical establishment. It's like refusing to go to a mechanic because you think they're all trying to rip you off. So you try to fix your car with duct tape and positive thinking. Insects, too, contributed to the 18th century pharmacopoeia. Cantharides, or Spanish fly, derived from blister beetles, was used as a powerful diuretic and aphrodisiac, though its highly toxic nature often led to severe internal damage and even death. Ground-up earthworms were used for various ailments, including fevers and convulsions, and believed to draw out impurities from the body. You might find yourself crushing dried insects into a powder, or boiling them in a broth, convinced that these tiny creatures held the key to your recovery. It's a testament to the belief that even the smallest, most unassuming creatures could possess potent, hidden powers. The placebo effect, that potent medicine of the mind, continues to be a significant factor. Many individuals who try unproven remedies report feeling better, not because of the active ingredients which may be inert or absent, but because of their belief in the treatment. This subjective improvement can reinforce their conviction, leading them to become staunch advocates for the cure, further spreading its influence. You might genuinely feel more energetic after taking a new supplement, and that feeling, however fleeting, is enough to convince you of its efficacy, even if a scientific study would show no difference compared to a sugar pill. It's a powerful testament to the mind's ability to heal, but also its capacity for self-deception. The use of animal fats and oils was also common. Bear grease, goose fat, and various animal oils were used in ointments and balms for skin conditions, rheumatism, and chest complaints. While some of these might have offered a soothing effect or acted as emollients, their true medicinal value was limited. You might rub a pungent, greasy balm onto your aching joints, finding temporary comfort in the warmth and massage, even if the animal fat itself offered little more than a barrier. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. It feels like you're doing something, but the underlying problem remains. The lack of critical thinking skills a mixer or the overwhelming amount of information can also contribute to susceptibility. In the 18th century, limited literacy and access to information made it difficult for people to discern fact from fiction. Today, while information is abundant, the sheer volume and the proliferation of misinformation can be equally disorienting. It requires effort to evaluate sources, understand scientific methodology, and differentiate between credible evidence and persuasive marketing. You might find yourself overwhelmed by conflicting advice, and in that state, the simplest, most confident claim often wins out, regardless of its truthfulness. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but the haystack is also on fire and full of other needles that are actually just pieces of hay. The belief in the vital spirit of animals was a strong underlying theme. Many believed that by consuming parts of an animal, you could absorb its inherent life force, its strength, or its resilience. This was particularly true for animals perceived as powerful or exotic. The blood of a freshly slaughtered animal, for instance, was sometimes consumed directly, believed to transfer vitality and cure anemia. You might witness a ritualistic consumption of animal blood, a primal act driven by the desperate hope of absorbing life itself. It's a raw, almost ancient form of medicine, rooted deeply in humanity's connection to the natural world. However misguided, the concept of natural as inherently good or safe is another enduring illusion. Just as 18th century remedies often boasted of natural ingredients, many modern supplements emphasize their all-natural origins, implying safety and efficacy. However, as we saw with the animal-derived concoctions and toxic minerals, natural does not always mean harmless or effective. Many potent toxins are found in nature, and extracting or concentrating natural substances without scientific understanding can be dangerous. You might gravitate towards a product because it's labeled natural, forgetting that hemlock is also natural. The lack of refrigeration meant that many animal products had to be dried, powdered, or preserved in alcohol, which further complicated their efficacy and safety. The risk of contamination, spoilage, and bacterial infection was incredibly high. You might be consuming a remedy that was not only ineffective but actively dangerous due to improper handling and preservation. It was a gamble with every dose, a biological roulette wheel spinning with your health on the line. The slow pace of scientific discovery and the inherent limitations of conventional medicine also contribute to the appeal of miracle cures. For chronic conditions, rare diseases, or illnesses that defy easy diagnosis, conventional medicine may not offer immediate or complete solutions. In these gaps, the promise of a simple, often dramatic, miracle cure can fill a void, offering hope where traditional approaches fall short. You might be suffering from a condition that doctors haven't been able to fully diagnose or treat. And in that frustration, you become more open to unconventional, unproven alternatives. It's like waiting for a complex software update. And in the meantime, you download a sketchy app that promises to fix everything instantly. The charlatans, of course, were masters at marketing these animal-derived concoctions. They would spin elaborate tales of exotic beasts, ancient secrets, and miraculous recoveries, all designed to enhance the mystique and perceived power of their remedies. They might claim their bear grease was rendered from a mythical beast from the deepest forests, or that their snake oil was extracted from a rare serpent found only in distant lands. This narrative added to the allure, making the repulsive seem desirable. You might find yourself captivated by their stories, momentarily forgetting the actual, rather disgusting, origin of the remedy they were selling. The role of media, then and now, in shaping public perception is undeniable. In the 18th century, it was pamphlets and broadsides. Today, it's social media, online articles, and podcasts. The ability to disseminate information, or misinformation, rapidly and widely allows unproven claims to spread like wildfire, reaching a global audience almost instantly. You might see a trending hashtag about a new miracle cure, and within hours, millions of people are exposed to it. Regardless of its scientific validity, it's a powerful amplifier, capable of spreading both truth and illusion with equal speed. The persistence of these remedies, even into the age of more scientific inquiry, speaks to the deep-seated human desire for a connection to nature and a belief in its inherent healing powers. While modern medicine has moved far beyond these practices, the idea of natural remedies, even those derived from animals, continues to hold a certain appeal. You might even see echoes of this in contemporary health trends, albeit in far less gruesome forms. The academic debate also considers the responsibility of modern media platforms in policing health misinformation. Should they actively censor or fact-check unproven health claims? Or does that infringe on freedom of speech? It's a complex ethical dilemma with no easy answers. You, scrolling through your feed, are left to navigate this landscape, trying to discern what is genuinely helpful from what is merely a cleverly disguised miracle cure. As you reflect on this menagerie of animal-derived cures, you can't help but feel a profound sense of awe at the human capacity for belief, even in the face of the truly bizarre. From powdered unicorns to dried pigeon droppings, the lengths to which people would go, and the substances they would consume in their desperate search for health, are a testament to the brutal realities of 18th century life. You might feel a pang of gratitude for the advancements that have spared you from such unsavory treatments, and perhaps a renewed appreciation for the simple, clean medicines of today. As the faint, lingering scent of something vaguely animalistic finally fades, you can finally close your eyes, knowing you've witnessed some truly wild attempts at healing. Ultimately, the echoes of the past are loud and clear. The human desire for health, the fear of illness, the yearning for a quick fix, and the powerful influence of belief remain constant across centuries. While the specific forms of miracle cures have evolved, from powdered mummies to detox teas, the underlying dynamics of hope, desperation, and exploitation persist. The lessons of the 18th century are not just historical curiosities, they are timeless warnings, reminding us to approach grand promises with skepticism, to value evidence over anecdote, and to recognize the enduring power of both the human mind and human vulnerability. You've journeyed through the desperate landscape of 18th century medicine, witnessing the theatrical charlatans, the perilous poisons, and the truly repulsive animal concoctions. Now, as the faint, lingering scent of those strange remedies finally fades from your imagination, prepare to explore perhaps the most subtle, yet profoundly powerful, miracle cure of all the human mind itself. The air around you seems to lighten, becoming less burdened by the tangible horrors of toxic substances and more infused with the intangible, yet undeniable, force of belief. You are about to discover how unwavering faith, even in the most absurd treatments, could offer fleeting comfort, a temporary reprieve from suffering, and sometimes a genuine sense of healing. As you drift into a deep, restorative sleep, consider that the true miracle of medicine isn't a single magical cure, but the slow, patient, and relentless pursuit of knowledge, the dedication to scientific rigor, and the continuous effort to separate fact from fiction. It's a journey that began centuries ago and one that continues to this very day, ensuring that the path to healing is paved not with illusions, but with understanding. Now that the echoes of the past have subsided and the visions of miracle cures have faded into the night, let your mind drift into a deep sleep. A sense of relief spreads through your body, as you realize that the fears and despair of the 18th century have been replaced by the safety and knowledge of our time. Take a deep breath, feel the softness of your pillow, and let all your worries fade away. No more poisonous potions, no more empty promises, just peace and quiet. You have come a long way, witnessing the mistakes and advances of man in his quest for health. Now, everything is okay. Let the last images of pompous healers, bizarre potions, and brutal knives drift away like clouds in the night sky. They are just memories, lessons from a time long gone. Relax every muscle, every thought, and allow yourself to drift into a dreamless sleep, a place of rest and renewal. All is safe. All is well. Imagine yourself afflicted by a persistent cough, a gnawing pain, or a debilitating fatigue. You've tried the physician's bleedings, perhaps even swallowed a dose of mercury, and still, the illness persists. Then you encounter a new remedy, perhaps a simple sugar pill, or a seemingly inert liquid, but it comes with a grand narrative. The charlatan who sells it, or the kind neighbor who recommends it, speaks with such conviction, such unwavering certainty, that a tiny spark of hope ignites within you. This isn't about the chemical properties of the substance, it's about the powerful psychological impact of believing that something, finally, will work. You take the medicine, and almost immediately you feel a shift, a subtle lessening of your symptoms, a glimmer of relief. This is the placebo effect, a phenomenon as old as humanity itself. And in the 18th century, it was often the most effective cure available.